Hey everybody, welcome back to the Mass Retirees Weekly Update. Today's Friday, September 23rd. I'm Sean Duhamel. Thank you so much for joining with us and tuning in this week. We have some really big news to report on relative to WEP and GPO and everything that's been happening with Social Security. But before I do that, let me first wish a happy birthday to my dad, who is a big fan of these videos. I found out recently that my father watches these videos every week. So Dad, thank you so much for that support. Looking forward to seeing you and Mom tomorrow. We're going to get together as a family, so we're really looking forward to that. Secondly, on Thursday, just yesterday, many of you may have received an automated phone call from our association, from me, conducting a survey for the upcoming November Massachusetts general election. Now, I have come to find out several members who live outside of Massachusetts also received these calls. I apologize for that. We thought we had stripped out all non-Massachusetts members, but with some folks being snowbirds or going back and forth, or in some cases, members maintaining a Massachusetts telephone number, despite the fact that you now live in Florida or another state, that was part of the reason for the confusion. So sorry about that. We did survey nearly 2,000 of our members, participated in the survey. We will be having a full report on the results, I believe next week, but it will certainly be used to inform myself and our whole leadership team here at Mass Retirees in terms of any general election endorsements that we're in the process now of making those endorsements before we go to press in about a week with our newsletter, and hopefully to get all that information to you before voting begins in October. But as I said at the outset, the main focus today is on the Social Security windfall elimination provision and the government pension offset. As some of you may already know, this past Tuesday, we had a bit of history made, if you will, in Congress. On Tuesday, the House Ways and Means Committee had a markup hearing on H.R. 82. Now, H.R. 82 is the legislation that's pending before Congress that would fully repeal both the WEP and the GPO. So it would make it go away forever. Everyone's benefits would be fully restored to the original amount, and it would be wonderful. That's something that Mass Retirees has wanted to achieve for a really long time. However, we've always run into roadblocks every step of the way as we've been trying to achieve full repeal. Well, this year, because of a change in the House rules that require any piece of legislation that has at least 290 co-sponsors, that type of legislation, or a bill that has at least 290 co-sponsors, goes on something called a consensus calendar. And it basically forces the House leadership to take action on that particular bill. And that's what happened with H.R. 82 this past Tuesday. The bill ended up on the consensus calendar back in late July and into August, and that triggered a series of events where the House of Representatives, the leadership from both parties, had to move forward with taking some action on the bill. Now, I should say at the outset that this does not trigger a vote on the House floor. It doesn't bring the bill forward for any kind of final resolution. It just means that the bill has to move forward in some capacity. It can't just stay bottled up in a particular committee, which had been the case for the past 39 years. So on Tuesday, the House Committee on Ways and Means voted to release H.R. 82 without any recommendation. They didn't recommend the bill for approval, nor did they report it out unfavorably saying the bill should be voted down. It was a neutral position. The other significant step that this process triggered, was requiring the Congressional Budget Office, the CBO, to put what is known as a score on the bill. Now, a score is basically a financial analysis of the cost of a particular piece of legislation. Now, the Congressional Budget Office is highly regarded by both Democrats and Republicans for their accuracy. And while reasonable people can look at the report and debate, one way or the other what the findings are and make the argument that cost estimates were either too high or too low, Congress, by and large, takes the opinion of the CBO very seriously and it's treated as gospel in many cases. So the CBO report that was also released on Tuesday puts the cost at full repeal over a 10-year period of time at $183 billion over 10 years. The Social Security actuary this past summer estimated the 10-year cost of full repeal to be $147 billion. So there's a bit of a difference between the two. I mean, they're relatively close. What's a few billion dollars amongst friends? But either way, it's a lot of money. And when you're looking at Social Security and the Social Security Trust Fund, typically every benefit under Social Security is funded through the federal payroll tax. That's the money that comes out of my paycheck every time I get paid. And for those of you who either worked in the private sector or maybe are still working in the private sector, you know that every time you get paid, your payroll, your FICA tax comes out. That's what goes to fund Social Security. Social Security traditionally does not draw upon general revenues or other sources of revenue to pay for benefits. It's all self-contained through the payroll tax. So when a new cost comes up, like full repeal, one of the concerns of the CBO as well as Congress is how are we going to go about paying for these things? And this has really been the challenge for full repeal, or one of the main challenges for full repeal, over the whole history that we've been advocating for weapon GPO to be done away with, is how do you pay for those costs? Now, it's one thing for us to argue that, well, you know, somebody contributed to Social Security, they paid that money, they should get what they earned, what they deserve. We agree with that. However, the money that our members would have paid into Social Security, in some cases generations ago, when you were actively working, those dollars are gone. They've already been spent. The Social Security operates on a pay-as-you-go basis, which means the funding, the tax revenue that comes into Social Security in any given year, those funds are used in that year to pay for current benefits. They're not set aside, they're not invested, it is not operated like a pension system, which is very, very different. So one of the hurdles with all of this has always been, where is the $180+ billion going to come from to pay for these costs? And that's one of the reasons why we have always said that the likelihood for full repeal can only come through a general reform of the overall Social Security system, similar to what we saw back in 1983 when weapon GPO were created in the first place. A reform of Social Security would also most likely include a reform of the payroll tax and how the payroll tax is applied at different income levels, and that would generate additional revenue to pay for some of these things. So at Tuesday's hearing, again, the committee released the bill without any recommendation. And if you watched the hearing, and it's available on YouTube, and the link for it is contained on massretirees.com, as well as within today's email message to all of our members. I urge you, if you have the time, watch the hearing. The weapon GPO portion of the hearing lasts for probably 25 to 30 minutes or so. But it will give you a pretty good understanding of the considerations that Congress is taking in mind as they're struggling with what to do with weapon GPO. Now, what you'll hear from Congressman Neal and Congressman Brady and the other Republican and Democratic members of the House Committee on Ways and Means is a couple of things. First and foremost, an agreement that the windfall elimination provision as it currently stands is flawed, it's wrong, it's very unfair, and it should be changed. However, you're going to hear a bit of a difference of opinion, whether they be from Republicans or Democrats, as to what to do about that problem. Now, some members of the committee do not support full repeal of WEP, but they do support a reform of the WEP, which is what we have been focused on here at Mass Retirees. You're going to hear a universal concern about the cost, both from Democrats and Republicans, about how to pay for full repeal. Even from Congressman Larson, who's the chairman of the Social Security Subcommittee and has his own legislation that would repeal weapon GPO. But his bill does so within the greater context of an overall Social Security reform. So I should also mention at the outset a word of thanks and congratulations to those members and those organizations that have worked so hard for many months and for the past several years, and in some cases for decades now, just like Mass Retirees and our coalition friends around the country, to bring these issues to the forefront, to put it on the front burner of Congress, and hopefully to get some action that will bring relief to our collective memberships. But without the work that has gone into H.R. 82 in particular, the hearing on Tuesday would not have happened. This bill would not have emerged, and the attention that has brought to this greater issue really can't be underestimated. This was a significant step forward just in terms of getting Congress to pay attention to what to some degree is a bit of a niche issue. Now, of course, that's not to say this is not important to us or to you, because it's extremely important to all of us. However, WEP right now only impacts about 2 million people across the whole country. There are 335 million Americans, and of those 335 million or so, only 2 million are impacted by the WEP, which is a small fraction of the total. And there are about 67 million Social Security beneficiaries today. Of that total 67 million Social Security beneficiaries, only 2 million people are impacted by the WEP. So it's a small segment of a larger group of people. It's very important to us, but this makes it challenging in terms of making any changes to the program that could negatively impact the larger number of people to help out a smaller number of people. So that's been one of our challenges. However, we believe that the most likely path forward and the most viable path forward to pass legislation both through the House as well as through the U.S. Senate, because remember, in order for a bill to become law, and the only way to change WEP and or GPO is by changing the federal law. Massachusetts and the other impacted states, we have no say in this directly. It has to come through an act of Congress. President Biden also cannot change WEP or GPO by an executive order. The federal law needs to be changed, and the only way we can do that is by passing legislation through the House of Representatives, which requires at least 218 votes, and through the U.S. Senate, which under the rules of the Senate, any Social Security legislation needs 60 votes. So right now in the Senate, there are 50 Democratic senators and 50 Republican senators. And when there's a simple majority tie, Vice President Harris, as the Vice President of the United States, breaks the tie. But that's not the situation we have under WEP and GPO, because we need 60 votes. So we're going to need all 50 Democrats and at least 10 Republicans to vote yes for full repeal. Now, we know that the Republican leadership in the Senate is opposed to full repeal. We've been told that directly. That was just reaffirmed to us earlier this week, that even if a bill were to pass the House, the Republicans in the Senate would block that bill from moving forward because they do not support full repeal. However, they do support WEP reform. And we have been told time and time again by Republicans and Democrats that the most likely path forward for anyone to be helped here is through a reform of the WEP. So that's what we're focused on. You'll also hear, if you listen to the comments made by members of the Ways and Means Committee on Tuesday, a number of them from both the Democratic and Republican side encouraged and called upon Chairman Neal and Ranking Member Brady to continue to work together to find a compromise that would allow WEP reform legislation to be passed into law this year. Now, we have been working very hard for a long period of time, but specifically over the past week and a half, working directly with Chairman Neal's staff as well as Chairman Brady's staff, together with our colleagues in Texas, to encourage and help them come together to resolve the relatively minor disagreements that continue to exist between their two versions of WEP reform. We're getting close. A solution remains elusive. But it's our hope that we can make the best of the 2.5 to 3 months that are left of this congressional session to get legislation through the House and through the Senate. And I'm calling on, and I'm very hopeful that those of you who are watching this video or reading the message we put out today, who have been focused on H.R. 82 and the drive for full repeal of weapon GPO, I hope that you will consider working with us to craft the best deal that we have available to us right now, which is to bring relief to the 2 million retirees who are impacted by the windfall elimination provision. Unfortunately and sadly, right now, again, we don't have the support for full repeal. We don't even have support for reform of the government pension offset, which of course is the spousal Social Security benefit. We don't have the votes in the Senate to address either one of those issues. So unfortunately, regardless of how hard we want to get this done or how hard we're working toward full repeal, or how unfair we believe the current situation is, and it is unfair, but at the end of the day, we need the support nationally and we need the votes in the Senate to make this become a reality. And the hard truth is that that support does not exist for anything beyond reform of the windfall elimination provision, which, by the way, we believe is the first step forward to bringing relief to our members. So if you're watching this and you are a supporter of H.R. 82 and you've been part of this movement, thank you for the work you've been doing. We're all in this together. We believe we share the same goal, but we need to work together to get there, and it's going to be a step-by-step process. If we hold out for the perfect solution, we're going to sacrifice the good, and at the end of the day, my fear is that we're going to walk away once again with nothing unless we can come together and work together on this. So we're going to continue doing everything possible here at Mass Retirees to resolve this as best we can in the time we have left in 2022. We're going to keep you updated of what's going on. If you are someone who's impacted by weapon GPO, continue to put the pressure on your local member of Congress. What we are asking for is that your local member, strongly encourage Chairman Neal and Ranking Member Brady to find common ground and come to an agreement that can bring about WEP reform this year in 2022. We are very close. We just need that final push to get us over that hump. But thank you for your continued support. Thank you for tuning in. Please feel free to call me or reach out with any questions. But we're going to do everything we can to get this thing resolved. I know how important it is to all of you, and we'll be talking to you again very soon. Take care, everybody.